hand over back to you, and then maybe see if there are any questions I can answer. We can answer.
No problem. I don't see any on the chat box, but also I'll open up the forum. So now, having heard what Anant has put forward in terms of neuroeconomics and what motivates people and turning intent into action, so far, do we have any questions from any of you? Please feel free to unmute.
Yes, I've got a question. Sorry, let me put my video on. How do you determine the motivations for the different people?
That's great. Great question, Shireen. So when we started out, it was questionnaire based, right? So you would we would administer. This is about 6 years ago, but there's a fascinating behavior bias that comes into play. So in 10 people, if you ask, saying, for for a sales team, simple question: are you above average or below average in the team? You'll have 9 out of 10 say I'm above average. So there is things like that. So what we realized is, to identify and assess what motivates people, we move to a learning loop. So every time the engine sends a nudge to an individual, it learns to say, did this individual take this coaching tip? And did the coaching tip actually help help improve productivity around that metric? So if you have a minute, I'm going to show you a very interesting insight on this. So let me just share my screen on that. Is my screen visible right now, Shireen?
Yes, it is.
Yep.
Awesome. So here's an example of a learning loop, right? So how will every time a nudge gets sent on and this is a competitive guy, okay? What you see as a graph is this individual's sales achievement in the 30 days in a month, okay? So since the engine knows you're competitive in nature, right, this individual, on the third of the month, when this guy's at about 6% achievement, it says, you know what, great show, because it's a coach, great show. You closed last month on the 8th position in your team. This month, why don't you focus on number of customer connects as an example, okay, to get better than the others. So it sends a nudge, and then it sees, did this individual actually take an action on that nudge or not? Did I do something on customer connects after getting feedback from my coach? I mean, this is just a compressed version. The nudge will obviously say, focus on X number of customer connects in the next number of days and blah, 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 right? But from a conceptual point, to answer your question, it sends a nudge based on the assumed persona of an individual, and learns to say, is this nudge making a difference for that individual on that metric or not?
Okay.
Right? So it's learning based on the observed action, not stated intent. So like, not questionnaire based, but observed. So in this case, as the same example, if this user was driven by achievement, essentially would, from the big 4 personality types, you would have a sense, right? It basically says, I like to hit my targets. That's what motivates me to act. So the nudge that the engine will send to someone who's an achiever kind of persona will be like saying, hey, you know what? You were at 70% last month. Try to hit your, be a little closer to your target and focus on this metric to get there.
Okay.
So what you see on the bracket below is, it uses different phraseology to kind of estimate the motivational persona of each individual.
Okay, so it would obviously start off everyone the same, and then as it learns, it would start tailoring. So we don't have to send our sales guys for psychometrics or, anything hectic. Okay, and then my other question I have is, so this is obviously an application that you say it works with our current CRM, so like a Salesforce, does it just kind of...
Yes. So it's an application, it's SaaS based. And it's as long as you have a browser, it will work. So it could be on your desktop, your laptop, your tablet, your mobile phone. So it will work in any place. And
it needs to obviously pull off sales data to be effective. So it needs to know what you've done. So are there some minimum requirements there? I mean, like, for
Correct.
example,
So it is very simple requirement. So we don't need a lot of integration with Salesforce, etc. If you have a simple MIS kind of system that you have where you're tracking metrics for your people, you can also send it to us as an Excel sheet, to us meaning to the engine. So from an integration point, it's fairly simple. So you're right, it does need data from a CRM. But you can have some data in CRM, some in your SAP for your billing if you're doing that separately, right? So it can take data from multiple sources as long as you're measuring them.
okay.
Did that answer your question?
So let's just say I'm a salesperson and I log into Salesforce. Would those prompts come through on Salesforce, or would I need to be in a separate window?
Right. So you don't need to be in a separate window. It will come to you if it's browser based. There's a one-time setup, and then the notifications come. The browser doesn't even need to be open; they pop up on the screen automatically. They are not part of the Salesforce tool, but they appear on the individual's desktop or laptop or phone automatically. So it's
Okay,
run off a web application.
I don't want to take all the time here, but maybe we can just schedule something separately just to see a demo of how it works with Salesforce or a CRM or something like that. Salesforce would be
Sure.
Yeah, we'll set.
Yeah, definitely.
We could
That's it
definitely
from
do
me
that.
then.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Actually, that's an interesting question.
Oh, sorry.
And I was just saying, thanks, Shri. That's a very interesting question because we don't get asked too often. How do you determine personas? So that's quite interesting. Thanks for that.
Sure.
And you know, Shireen, you were asking about psychometrics. These days, there's so much of assessment overload in corporates. Uh, People have assessment fatigue. You know, you're doing MBTI, you're doing all sorts of psychometrics, and users have gotten quite clever at giving you the answers that you hope to see. And what the tool does, it learns based on your behavior, and you can't really fudge that. So,
Well, exactly. I mean, sometimes people think they are one way and they're actually another way. And the only thing to really determine it is to look at their behavior. So
exactly.
I'm really happy with the approach that it's taking.
Exactly. We got time maybe for one more question before Anant goes on. Anybody else?
Anant, it's Shamal here. Maybe a question from my side. Can you talk a little bit about the AI engine that worxogo has invested in on the platform here,
Right.
and the machine learning aspects of it, and what it brings to the solution?
Sure. Great. Thanks, Shamar. I'll do that. So essentially, what we've built out as an AI engine is pretty much like a KPI coach for employees, and it's a productivity wingman for team leaders and managers. Uh, So from a learning point, Shamal, just to give you that context, today the engine is sending out close to about 300,000 behavior nudges, on a daily basis, and it's essentially learning based on that to say what motivates an individual to take action at their job. So for example, it will, within a few weeks of launching in a customer, it can figure out saying, you know what, for this set of people, Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock is the right time to nudge them on making customer calls. Wednesday is afternoon is the best time if they need to be pushed or nudged on a cross sell, as an example. So it's really the behavior layer that we are looking to drive. So it looks at the data that teams already have, CRMs already capture, and it's understanding what motivates people to do better in their jobs for themselves as well as for the organization. So our AI engine, the way it's orchestrated is there's productivity data coming in from CRMs. The nudge interaction with the users is one thing that it's looking at and understanding. And the third one is the persona profiles of individuals, where it can figure out saying what motivates individuals. The fourth part, Shaman, which is the most interesting one, is it now knows that it can now figure out saying what kind of nudge will lead to what percentage improvement in productivity for teams. So, and again, it takes a little while in a new team to deploy, but imagine having augmented intelligence in the organization. If you're the sales leader, if it comes and tells you, you know what, 40% of your team are driven by mastery. So, and you know what, uh, yes, everyone's looking for incentives, but if you can reorient your incentive structure or your reward and recognition structure around mastery, you will get 3% uptick in sales. So it's really looking at the behavior and layer in teams, in organizations, and how you can use it to uh, drive productivity.
Sure.
Did that answer the question, Shaman?
Yeah, no, that's good. We have a question.
Yeah, I see Tanya got a question. An example, is it possible to see an example of a typical technology landscape, one used previously for a client?
Sure, Tanya. So, okay, so the way it works is, and I'll see if I can pull out a slide very quickly. Systems integration.
Okay.
Got it. So it essentially, let me see if I have one open right now, or I'm just going to open it while I walk you through. So you would have a CRM transaction system layer, and typically on top of that you'll have an MIS or an analytics layer. The integration, the way it, and so what, and worxogo essentially sits, I wouldn't say on top, but on on at the side with each one of these. The data that flows, there is no customer data required or transaction data. So for example, if it's a banking company, our engine does not need loans, loan ID, customer ID, or anything of that sort. It will need just saying, here's the name of the individual, here's the KPI, and here's the value of the KPI. So Anant and Shamal and Neshika, 3 people in the team, our KPIs or metrics are customers contacted, sales done, target achievement, number of activities done, right? So for each of these 3 KPIs for these 3 individuals, it will just have values and saying what's the target for them and what's the actual achievement. From a systems integration perspective, it's flat file batch mode based integration that we do currently. We can also do direct API calls, but 90% of our customers, because they're pulling data from multiple locations, multiple transaction systems they have internally in the organization. They prefer a flat file batch mode kind of integration. So it's literally that. It is CSV files with metrics and individual employee IDs of some sort to identify them. And that's about it. And that can come in at any frequency depending on how frequent your system would like to share that information. So we do real time as well. And fundamentally, it's a it's there to be a coach and drive actions on build the right consistency habit. So Tanya, I see the question. Yes, it's a SaaS product. It's per user. There is no infrastructure cost that you need to pay to set up. We are Microsoft and so AWS and Microsoft scale up partners. So as long as you have we can set it up either on Azure or on AWS. We'll very soon get onto the SAP cloud as well. And it's a per user thing. You don't need to. It's a single tenant architecture. So your data does not get shared with any other customer's data as well. So it's a private cloud.
Yeah.
Anand, just on that, I know you spoke about AWS cloud. I know that CCOM are using their own cloud.
Right.
So
do you set up on private cloud or on premise as well?
So we don't have an on-prem, but we can the private cloud bit we can discuss, and it's a little technical in nature, so I won't be able to answer it
Sure.
offhand. But it's possible. It's possible. We don't do on-prem deployments because the engine is learning from all the instances, right? And I so does that
Yeah.
Yeah.
was that okay?
Yeah.
And I think Tanya has another question on benchmarks. So
Yeah.
Tanya, the response is you can set benchmarks per individual. So this is essentially built to solve for uh, each individual. So yes, you can define individual targets uh, at a KPI level, at an individual level. So which is why it's not one size fits all. It's
Yeah.
personalized, and
Yeah. And I think at the team level, which is what I think Tanya is alluding to, defining typical personas, you can then aggregate and report on that. Just a question
absolutely.
related to that then is that, can you then compare how different personas perform across industries?
Could you
So
repeat the question, Shaman? I didn't get it.
if I am a competitive persona,
Right.
would you be able to draw benchmarks as to how a competitive persona might perform in a particular industry or across industries? Is that something that's possible, given the fact that there's a lot of data being collected?
So we do. So surprisingly, we do have. There are some fascinating insights that come out from industry is one. Yes, that's possible, and we do that. But within an organization across different geographies, so or different. So in one multinational organization, they have the setup in India, in Southeast Asia, and the US, and the composition of teams is so different location by location. So it points back to the same question, Shamal, on personalization. It will tell you at an individual level what happens. So can you change your incentive structure or reward and recognition? Does it need to be one size fits all? Does it need to work the same way in India versus Philippines or South Africa or the US? The answer is no. Even within a country, depending on the composition, now it gives senior management the ability to uh, focus on very targeted individuals to drive that drive that change.
Sure.
Cool. I think
So the answer,
Jay has his hand up. He has a question here.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Nishika. Anand, thanks very much. I must admit, it's quite intriguing concept and application. Yeah. The question I have, I guess salespeople can be quite creative and crafty. Let's put it that way. If the AI engine is, I guess, driving nudges and then looking at behavior from a systemic perspective, I guess, how do you kind of build in what happens outside the system? Because often a salesperson will use a CRM as a system of record, not a system of enablement and, drive. And it's the old sales thing, under promise and over deliver. So you rather sandbag and put stuff in the background and not into the system. So, I guess, like, what is your correlation, between the performance and what's in the system and what the AI engine's actually building up? It'd be interesting to understand the experience on that.
well, that's really fascinating, Jay. I think, and it's in fact, I will share with you. We were working with one of our customers. It's a global automotive company, and their problem was they said, "Look, we've invested in a CRM, and they have a dealer network, and they have a dealer management system, and so on." They said when we look at our market share from our DMS, or sorry, from our from our sales system, it tells us we have 60% market share. But when we actually look at vehicles registered, we see our market share is much lesser. So our problem really is top of the funnel. Exactly what you said, Jay. And I'll give you the three different. This is a live case. Three different personas in the sales team. Uh, and all three of them have a target of 10 per month, for example. The top guy knows that they'll be able to do, the top salesperson will be able to say, look, I know I'll hit my target. So there's no need for me to enter data into your CRM. So it's a system of record, like you said. Last 5 days, sales suddenly happen. Right? The retail sales will happen.
Yeah.
So so the top 10-15% of the people were using it for a system of record, but because they didn't need to do anything else. Why? Because when their manager would say, hey, what's going to happen? He said, relax, boss, I'll get you your sales. And so if you get pushed, okay, so I have 10 leads in my pocket, I'll give you 8 of them for now. I'll keep 2 for the time being, because someone's pushing me to put data in. The middle of the bell curve kind of guys, no matter what they do, they're not going to hit their targets. So what do? They'll keep 15 or 20 leads, hot, cold, red, yellow, green, whatever, whichever ways they categorize it, right? Keep those leads alive in the system to show they're doing activity. So they're using the system, but not using it well enough. That sandbagging bit that you talked about. The bottom guys, anyways, no matter what you do, not going to share. 3 months after we deployed, the behavior that was configured was to say more the better, because it was a problem of adoption of using the CRM for a system of transaction, not a system of record. So say what you do, don't tell me after you've done it. So at the OEM level, this is 3,000 people in India where this got deployed. Uh, they would find out about their retail sales in the last week of the month. They changed it to say one metric and one behavior, more the better. The more number of qualified leads you put, the better it is. I'm not giving you a target. Your sales target is what it is. You got to do what you do. This is an behavior target around an activity you do. Within 3 months, they had 40% more sales leads being added on top of the funnel. And you can actually drive it for action rather than just uh, for outcome. If I've kind of answered that. So yes,
Right.
you're right. Salespeople will typically in some ways try and game the system, but that's because most of the metrics are around outcomes, not around activities, and not around actions around those activities.
Yeah, sure. So it's really incentivizing people to start using it,
Correct. So
using
it's
the source systems as much as possible.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because the coach, you're telling them that this is important, not just by your manager saying it. Because if you recall, even though in sales teams you'll have this setup that everyone says, "Look, you got to enter the system, enter it in, and all that." But when push comes to shove, when the sales rep talks to his or her manager, they'll say, "You know what? Get me the sale. The rest of it is good to have, not really a must-have right now." So,
Right.
yeah. So,
Some really
So I
interesting
think that,
questions here. Sorry, Jay, you were going to say?
yeah, no, I was just going to actually say that I think then together with this solution is probably a wrap around it in terms of the coaching that goes with the management, the leadership, and
yes.
the individuals themselves in terms of how they uh, apply the process. And compliance is not a word people like anyway. So
Yeah.
as soon as the compliance comes out, they don't want to do it, right?
Absolutely.
Exactly.